can go from good evening. This is the Land Use Committee meeting of Wednesday, March 18th. I'll ask everybody to go around the room and introduce themselves. I'm Jay Rosepepe, Portage City Council member, and my video is not on. There, now I am.
I'll go next. I'm Scott Diener, Council Member 3.
Sure, I would like to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Shira Dedman. I'm in position number 6.
Nick Bond, I'm the Community Development Director.
Jim Fisk, Principal Planner.
Dennis Ryan, Public Works Director.
Charlotte Archer, City Attorney.
Thank you all. We have a published agenda. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? Okay. First item is elected chair.
Mr. Acting Chair, I would nominate you as chair again. I think you do a good job. And
I'll
and
accept
I
any
support
other
your work.
nominations.
Yay.
All right.
Oh, that's right. It's just the two of us that can say something.
You can
Right.
say whatever you
Yay!
want.
Way to go, Jay. Way to do it.
All right. Thank you for your confidence. So we have that. I'll take it, elected chair. Next item up is discussion of final plat processing amendments that we had heard prior at City Council. I guess, Nick, this would be you or Jim?
Jim will take this one.
Yeah, so we're going to provide just an update on the proposed amendments to chapters 2022, 2080, 2090, and 2094. We reviewed this, the Land Use Committee did at the February meeting, but this is just an update for those of you who weren't in attendance. So the goal of this is to align with state law and create an administrative pathway for approval, final plats. Currently, final plats require a public hearing and council action, even though all improvements have already been completed and reviewed under the preliminary plat and land disturbing activity permit. At this stage, the question is simply whether the conditions have been met, so another hearing adds redundancy and uncertainty. State law allows cities to delegate final plat approval to staff or a commission because approval is a ministerial one. Once the requirements are satisfied, the hearing isn't required. Staff recommends shifting to an administrative approval model for efficiency and predictability. The red line draft included in your packet is the same that was in your February packet that was provided to the Planning Commission at their March meeting. Planning Commission indicated that they were supportive of the draft amendments in their current form. So we plan to bring this to the Planning Commission for a properly noticed public hearing at their May meeting. In the meantime, we'll do the behind the scenes things, SEPA determination, communicate the proposed amendments to the Department of Commerce, those types of things. And so I suspect that the final ordinance could be in front of the City Council by late May or the beginning of June.
Scott, Cheryl, any questions?
I am completely supportive of this. I think this eliminates a step that many see as unnecessary, especially at a time when the holding costs for a plat are at their highest. There was an RCW that changed this for counties a while ago, and it eliminated a lot of unpredictability, including when you could schedule your final plat approval with the authority. In this case, for me, it was the Board of County Commissioners, and we had no control over that process. And so I think there's a lot of similar comparisons here, and I'm 100% behind it.
I'm in complete support. Mainly anything that we can do to move things forward quicker, I think is a good thing. And after reading the changes, they're not certainly not burdensome or difficult to understand. So I think we can move this forward. Any other comments? Okay, that was easy. Next item is window display standards for adult retail uses. And so, Cheryl, I'll let you go with that one since Eric talked to you about it.
Recently, a adult goods store, I don't know what to call it. it they're shuttering and they're on Bay Street, and there is a concern that if they were to move, if a new store were to move in the downtown area, that having the window display remain family friendly would be important. And so that is why this suggested ordinance is being put forth to this committee to talk about whether we want to to adopt an ordinance for display standards in terms of keeping them family friendly.
All right. That's why Charlie asked you to stay on for this one. Just to see what you have from previous. I looked at our ordinances, which is 9.20.080, that talks about a family adult and display. It's very broad about what it says. I'm empathetic, but at the same time, I'll go. Sometimes it's in the eye of the beholder about what can be considered pornography and not. And I'll leave it that way. Charlie, would you like to weigh in and help this discussion along?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think understanding that the business that was at least in part an impetus for this conversation is shuttering. This may be the time to consider the council's views on this type of regulation, to the extent there is a will for the council to consider this. Based on constitutional jurisprudence, we can utilize time, place, and manner restrictions associated with this type of material to a certain extent, drawn with very carefully, narrowly tailored regulations. So there is not an outright prohibition on us regulating in this space, but we do want to proceed very carefully. So to the extent the proposed I believe there was an actual proposed ordinance circulated, or I've only ever had a very brief conversation with Eric about this as a concept. I haven't reviewed a draft ordinance yet, but I'm happy to do so and offer red lines. But usually before legal gets involved at that level, we have some direction from a majority of the council in order to ensure that we're utilizing legal services. So generally, yes, we can regulate in this space, and regulating while there are no actors actively in the space is always preferable to trying to enact regulations midway through a business's life cycle. So I'm happy to assist with that, but we do have to be cognizant of the constitutional parameters that we operate in when we are potentially impacting free speech through things like signage and the other ways we speak as a community.
What does that mean in terms of moving forward, just to be clear? So you would like draft ordinance language sent to you?
No, I was wondering if Eric had actually drafted an ordinance. I don't know if he did in this context.
I don't, nothing
Okay.
nothing I've seen.
Well,
Staff has not been asked to draft anything, and I'll just share that our current code restricts adult entertainment and only allows it in certain zones. But in terms of adult novelty stores or adult sex stores, which are defined in some other jurisdictions' codes as a land use, we don't restrict those. Those just fall under general retail sales. And so I think there are two approaches. One, you could create a zoning definition for adult novelty store or adult sex store and decide which zones it would be permissible to have that type of business. But I think what Eric was suggesting had more to do with what restrictions exist on window displays of those businesses. And so I think you could tackle this from the standpoint of maybe we only want these things in the commercial heavy zone versus maybe we don't restrict which zone they're in, but do prohibit displays in the windows in some fashion.
Yeah, I know the issue from what I heard was really, it wasn't so much as keeping them out of, we'll say, like the heart of downtown. It was really just making, if somebody does move there, having a display, a family, having parameters around a family friendly display. Suffice to say, he didn't want like a, let's say like a, my last use this language, a dildo in front of in the window. Like he
That's
just wants to be able to prevent something like that. So like that's kind of like my
well,
understanding of what we would be searching, not so much to keep them out.
And
okay.
I would say that in our downtown mixed use zone, which is the core of our walkable downtown where people are closest to storefront windows, that may be a zone where you both don't want something in the window, but also don't want windows that are totally covered because then you just have a dead space in your downtown.
I see. I see. That's
So
a
this
really good
came this
point.
came
Really good point.
this came up several years ago when that business first moved in. There wasn't any additional, let's put it this way, uh, the council did not move forward with any additional information or looking for additional restrictions. And Scott, feel free to weigh in, because I remember when we had several people that testified at the public, not a public hearing, at the citizens comment section. And so I think the appropriate place would be next Tuesday to bring this up in good of the order and see if we want to move forward with doing any more information. So it doesn't take any more staff time yet, and then something that we bring back to land use next month. So does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just add my 2 cents here. I think everything should be on the table. I think that was a different council, different time, different council. And um,
Well, that's what I
you
said.
know,
That's why I said I'd bring it back up to council
yeah, yeah.
when we do our report.
So that's I'm in support of that. So
Okay. All right. Then that's what we'll do, and we'll be able to let staff know which way we want to proceed next Tuesday. That works for everybody.
thanks, Nick, for laying out those options.
Okay, item 4 is potential code amendments for increased efficiency.
Okay, so we're bringing forward several potential code amendments aimed at improving efficiency in our land use review processes. This stage, we're not asking for decisions. We're just trying to understand which concepts the committee would like us to explore further. We're looking at several options to reduce interpretation challenges, such as adding clear definitions for commonly used terms and simplifying narrative parking standards in straightforward tables. We also have some ideas that might streamline routine review, including expanding administrative approval of minor site plan changes, creating a pre-approved plant list, and allowing small administrative deviations in landscaping quantities. Other options focus on reducing hearings and discretionary review. These include reclassifying certain low-impact conditional use permit categories, developing more objective design standards supported by graphics, and potentially creating a minor CUP pathway for uses that don't warrant a full hearing. And last, we're exploring whether overlapping review steps, building and design landscaping, SEPA, general development standards associated with an LDAP, if they could be consolidated into a single optional review track to reduce duplication. So we're just looking for your input on which of these concepts that are listed in your packet that you see as most valuable for staff to continue work on or actually start work on. So just curious on your thoughts on those.
I may have missed that in the packet because mine was very short.
It is the last page in your packet. It is one page.
I saw that, and
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't see that either.
that one I remember seeing. I thought it was tied to. Okay, Scott, do you have a weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I think that tackling sorry, I have a visitor. Not a visitor, my son. Anyways, I think it's important that we tackle the permissibility in our code because I think and I can speak from experience that historically sometimes we live by a code that was developed a while ago, and it requires, for example, a hearing. When if you were to look at that use fresh today, you would say, does it really require a hearing? When you look at what the state requires for hearings with their land use, it's geared towards heavy industry and hazardous uses. And so sometimes I think when jurisdictions are putting uses in front of a hearing examiner, they really don't need to have that hearing because the next layer down, which is less expensive and quicker and less review for staff, also provides the same opportunity for the public to provide input. It just doesn't require that public hearing component. So I think it's worth a careful look at those uses and to say, hey, do they still require that we have this higher threshold, or would we be happy if it was moved down to a lower typology? And I think that's touched on in a couple areas in the last page of the packet. And then I like the idea of a pre-approved landscaping plant list. I think especially if it's climate appropriate, like was mentioned, I think that's a good way to go. I think a lot of the information that's out there today doesn't reflect climate adaptive or drought tolerant plantings. So I think that's a good thing for us to be on the cutting edge of. And then I think deviations for landscaping qualities, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, but I don't have a problem with that. And then also, as to parking, we have seen that the state has emphasized a reduction in parking for uses, particularly multifamily and commercial uses. I think that can be kind of challenging in some jurisdictions, like perhaps Port Orchard. So I'd want to approach that carefully. And then I think the only other one that I didn't talk about is common terms. And I think it's always helpful to clarify definitions for people, both staff and the public. Um, oh, and my wife just walked in. Sorry. My son just got back from college for spring break, so things are happening in the Diener household. Um, I would like to tackle all of these, but prioritize them at the same time. That's my more than 2 cents.
Sure.
I'm gonna say I am all in with what Councilmember Diener just said.
Okay. I went back through those and I don't think, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking for just acknowledgement to go ahead and proceed with these, because none of them conflict with each other, where
No,
it'd be choice one or choice B the way I read them.
yeah, I mean, they're all kind of independent of one another, but
Right.
I tried to order them in the order of complexity. So that's really the intent of that kind of that list. But yeah,
And if I can chime in here, I had asked Jim, we've been talking about process improvements and trying to just improve the overall experience for people working with DCD. And we're working on a lot of things with technology and in other areas. And Jim's group, the planning group, wasn't really a part of that. And I asked Jim to come up with some recommendations for items where people are getting hung up or where we could potentially provide more flexibility so that it's sort of a holistic department-wide effort just to make improvements. And I would say with regard to the conditional use permit issue, there's a little bit of context I want to provide on that. And years ago we had because we're the county seat and we have the court up the hill, we have a lot of bail bonds, and so the council spent a lot of time discussing bail bonds because we had quite a few of those in our downtown, and they felt that they didn't want certain service type uses in downtown. But they also didn't want to go so far as to say that it's not allowed. And so they decided to make all sorts of things downtown conditional uses kind of to discourage them without outright prohibiting them. And, we've had several barber shops come in for conditional use permits, and it's really just if they meet the criteria, we have to approve it. There's no council discretion to say this one is good or this one is bad. We've just created an unnecessary hurdle. And so I think, at least with our downtown as it relates to conditional uses, there needs to be some discussion of do we want service uses downtown? And we should either say, no, we do not, or yes, they're allowed outright, and sort of get rid of the extra unnecessary hoop that the conditional use permit process presents. But I think there are a lot of uses in our code that are conditional uses, mostly because council didn't want at the time a whole lot of those uses, but they didn't want to prohibit them entirely either. And so it was really throwing up a barrier as a means to
Yeah.
saving spaces for restaurants and retail and other things that generate traffic in the areas where that was desired.
And I think you hit on a key term that I think a lot of people reflect upon and are impacted by, and that is barriers. And to the extent that we can remove barriers and help people out, we know that development is getting expensive, has been getting expensive for quite a while, really. I mean, we've seen these shifts since COVID. And I don't know, Nick, if you went to the KBA luncheon today, but they're suggesting that the cost of timber could go up by another 45, 50% in the near future. So anyways, I would like us to look at all these things and whatever we can do to remove barriers while still keeping the public process intact. I think that's a good way to go.
Well, I guess it's a question of, do you want, businesses moving in or keep empty storefronts waiting for the business that you want to come in?
Well said.
Oh, always kind of interesting. I would say move ahead, Jim, and we'll look forward to more information as it comes in.
Well, it sounds to me like the priority should be conditional uses from this discussion. So, yeah, we'll begin work on that.
Do you
Good.
want to suggest to this committee next time, maybe just a prioritization of these?
Yeah, well, yeah, that was kind of the intent of this, but yeah, I mean, we can revisit it, but yeah, it sounds like I could get started on, or our team can get started on conditional uses in the meantime.
Yeah, in the meantime, I think we could send you back what we think our priorities would look like, and then you can do the math and say, here's what it's shaped out to be.
And I think the planning commission has a role here as well. And so sometimes we take things to this committee before they go to the planning commission, but we could just give this to the planning commission and say, hey, we'd like you to work on these, and let the planning commission kind of tackle what it wants to first
I'd
as
be
well,
fine with this.
unless you feel strongly about it.
I don't feel strongly about it. I feel like go forth and prosper, so to speak. Work with the planning commission and get this moving.
Yeah, I don't have a preference one way or the other. One of the advantages of this group is that we get to see the people that come to council meetings and have voiced their concerns, and so we understand the landscape a little bit better perhaps than the planning commission, but then also with the good staff of Port Orchard explaining that landscape to the planning commission, that works for me as well.
All right, super. I think this is one Charlie's here for, notice rules for public hearings.
Yeah, and that was one that I put forward, so I can explain what my thought was. So from what I was seeing in the rules, and it's good that Charlie's here, correct me if I'm wrong. The requirement for notice of hearing is that it's published in the Kitsap Sun, essentially. It says like the newspaper of something, but
Newspaper
for us,
record.
yeah, for us, that's the Kitsap Sun. And so in terms of actually, and then it's posted in front of the property. So in terms of coming into this day and age, I think it's important that we begin to require that these things are posted where people really are. So like putting it on, posting it up on our social media platform, like Facebook, and in our news. Well, I think it goes out in our newsletters, but just to be clear, making that also part of the rule is making sure that it's posted in our newsletter. And that way it's really actually getting in front of people, because I'm, hearing from people. I mean, a lot of people don't read Kitsap Sun. and especially where they usually put the postings, like the little blurbs. And so I just don't think that that's sufficient. I just don't feel like it's sufficient notice, like in the sense of this day and age where people are actually finding their information. And this is because, especially when we had our, a recent hearing, a lot of people are coming back to me saying, I didn't know it was happening. I didn't hear about it, this and that. And I never saw it posted or, whatever it is. So that's why I'm like, I think that if we really are serious about something like transparency and getting information to the people, that this needs to change. And ideally, so just to add on that, ideally, using it as a platform to help educate people. So a lot of people don't understand what they're allowed to do and the rules around like a hearing. And then also the city council, there's like a lot of confusion about city councils, like what we're allowed to do. And so it would be nice to be able to link to an FAQ with a lot of the issues that were causing confusion with people. Thank you.
So do you have a specific municipal code that you're looking at? Because I'm looking at that right now on public hearings.
Let me see. I'd have to look it up. I just remember reading it and it saying the newspaper of record.
So
Because, I
Jim,
mean,
if I'm not mistaken, we have all of our public notices get posted on our website already, and then there's a listserv that you can sign up to receive these notices for all notices in the city. Is that your understanding?
Well, I think at one point we were doing that, and then a few years ago, the former permit center manager kind of put an end to that. But I believe that the city clerk is still posting them online. And periodically, we have
And
to
I
go back and
believe you
clean
can
those
sign
up.
up on our website to receive certain types of notices, and I think those go out through the city clerk's office.
From my understanding, they may not have been doing it. And now that there's a new person, they may be picking it up again. So I guess when we talk about practice, the fact that we can decide to do it and not do it, I was hoping that we can kind of move away from practice and make it a policy that it has to be done. That way there's not like a time where it's like, oh, okay, well, we did or we didn't do it. That way it's like required.
Yeah, so you're talking about codifying that we
Yeah.
would have some sort of online presence with these.
Yes.
But I
Yeah, that
think
we basically use our, like where we do have an online presence, we will use that to make these
Right.
notices. Mhm.
Maybe
Well,
not,
I mean-
maybe that online presence isn't necessarily talking about the action in front of the planning commission, for example, but it's directing people to where they can go to see that information, click here, or I should say, and for future announcements, sign up here and you'll get all future announcements similar now, or whatever category that might be.
Well, I think it's
That
kind
makes
of like
sense.
both. Hey, notice of hearing, like
Yeah.
you said, notice of hearing here, click for information. And then, like you said, always sign up for, and I always direct people to sign up for our newsletters. I'm like, do you sign up for the newsletter? You don't? You got to do that.
Well,
So-
there's two things here. One is, hey, general, we'd like to do this, and two is our role as city council is a policy.
Yes, policy.
And so my question is, are you looking for staff to look at codifying a policy? And if so, then what do you want it to
Oh.
look like?
Okay,
or
I could do
inform?
that. I'll do that out-
Hang on,
I'll send
hang
a
on, hang on.
draft info then.
Please let me finish. And at this point in time, have you talked to Brandy about this, about what we do put out for policy yet? I was just curious if you had.
Yes,
You have talked to her?
yes.
So I wanted to share my screen because
Yep.
we have this news and announcements page, and just for anybody who might watch the video, there you can click on three different options to apply filters, but one of those is DCD public notices, and then there's public hearing notices. And so when you apply those filters, it gives you in chronological order all city public notices, and then there's separately a sign up list for public notices on the website where you can go online and you can check to receive project notices. And so this is how you get on the email list to automatically receive these as they're posted on the website. And so I'm wondering if, we have our new communications person who just started 2 weeks ago. I'm wondering if Megan could do a post letting people know periodically that if you would like to get these sorts of notices, this is where you go to sign up for that. Because I think we do have a system in place for this, but I can confirm with the clerk that they've been doing this, but I have not. I mean, it looks like the list of notices that's on here, including the Hull Avenue rezone, and other notices are on our website already going back. This one was October 29th for the Hull Avenue rezone. And so if people sign up for this serve, they will receive these notices regularly.
Oh, sorry, just to be clear, what I was talking about like is not just having it on a website, but that it is disseminated. So the notice going out is disseminated via, like, since we have a presence on Facebook, so like social media, Facebook, and our newsletter. So just that's what I was
Okay.
specifically wanting to refer to, not that it's just published on a website, but that it's disseminated through our means of how we used of we, the ways in which we communicate with our community.
And Sherry, you're not thinking that, let's say for our newsletter, that there's going to be a detailed breakdown of what the project is, like the notice shows, but you are hoping to see something like so-and-so applicant has applied for so-and-so. For more information, if you're interested, click here.
Yeah. So like notice of public hearing, click, this has exactly what you said. And then
Okay.
that way it's right there in the subject line. If people are interested, it's catching their eye. And then, and like I said, and same on Facebook, notice of public hearing, boom, for more information. And then we have it on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Charlie, I don't think we would need a policy for that. That may just be something to give information to the mayor to start including, correct?
Correct. I do think I just want to pause for a second, if it's welcome. I heard some
Please.
comments about it being sort of ad hoc, our actions being somewhat ad hoc. I want to confirm that the notice we provide is compliant with all applicable laws. And unfortunately, we are required to post in a newspaper.
Yeah.
We've tried to lobby the state legislature that nobody reads the
Yeah.
newspaper anymore, but that is a legal requirement for us. And we actually have to bid for the newspaper. So every year we bid for a newspaper, and the Seattle Times, or excuse me, the Kitsap Sun wins. And so we legally have to post there. It sounds like what the council is interested in is looking for alternative means in addition to the legal requirements by which notice can reach members of the public.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just want to caution against rhetoric that implies in any way that we are doing current noticing in any sort of ad hoc or inconsistent manner. Because my understanding is the clerk is absolutely making sure that those emails are going out, and then it's actually Jim and Nick's team that makes sure we statutorily meet all of the noticing requirements, posting on site, as Jim mentioned, mailing to property owners within a certain distance. There's a lengthy list. What you're asking for is sort of additional add-ons that are specific to the technology available to us. That absolutely is something that could be done in an informal manner. We'll want to make sure on the staff side that we clearly identify that so there is longevity if we have transitions in positions. I'm trying to think through as we are moving towards a new website, and many of my agencies have as a feature on their websites, as soon as you land on their page, it pops up tonight is a hearing, something like that. I think we could even activate with our new website to really truly engage folks in addition to social media, in addition to the other means of outreach. We have to be cautious from a legal perspective of balancing all of the efforts we make with what is legally prescribed under the Land Use Petition Act. And because we are essentially, it's a balancing act with the rights of the applicant and the steps that we need to do in order to make the public known. So nothing you've said makes me concerned in that realm, but I just want to always be cognizant of that balance. We're only allowed to do a certain level of due process under the Land Use Petition Act. Anything beyond, this is why we do closed record hearings. Anything beyond can actually violate the law as well. So, but nothing you're suggesting enters into that realm. The other aspect of what I heard was FAQs and more education on the proceedings that we undergo. And I think that's a great idea. There's absolutely white papers and one sheets, MRC has them created, that we could embed in our website or link to, that describe what a quasi-judicial proceeding looks like. And I could make my speech at the beginning of a quasi-judicial proceeding even more robust if that was the council's interest. So there's different tools we could do for educating folks on what these different land use things look like. One agency I work with does an actual, what did they call it? Not a town hall, but it was like a lunch and learn on planning. And they would explain the Land Use Petition Act to members of the public who are interested, or they would explain what a plat is. And that's something, if the council were interested, we could have those types of open house outreach moments. One, I think, did it like Jeopardy. They did a game. So there's a whole variety of ways to educate the public on the variety of things that you as council members deal with. And we're always open to those suggestions. We're doing right now what we're legally required to do, both at the state level and as prescribed by the council. So anything more, we're happy to support.
And I wanted to also point out that I think there also is a bit of a risk, because we're doing probably 50 to 100 legal notices a year, just depending on permit volume. And so if every one of those is a social media post, I think you're almost diluting the message. And so I'm wondering if there's a more targeted way to identify specifically which types of permits go out, or alternatively, we do mailing notices for a lot of these projects. And I feel like project impacts have kind of a range. And so if something's on social media, there are people outside of the city who are potentially receiving notice and then might comment on a proposal when they really are sort of outside of the impact area of a project. And one of the things we have to be cautious of too is that every time we put together a public record, we're adding the complete public record, and very often staff is responding to those comments. And so it does create a workload for staff if we're getting comments from people who live all the way across the city who are commenting about a project because they either don't understand the scope of the project or where it is. And I think just posting the legal notice without having almost like a website for each project saying this is where the project is, which is not something that we currently do, you're potentially soliciting a whole lot of input and a whole lot of requests for information, maybe beyond your target audience. And so I think we need to be careful about what we're asking for here, because I'm all in favor of outreach, but I want to make sure that we're not creating unnecessary confusion or fear or work for city staff.
So hang on for a second. Jim, you got your hand raised, and then I have a comment.
Yeah,
ahead,
Nick,
Jim.
you said maybe we can do targeted outreach, and Charlotte can tell me I'm wrong, I'm sure. But my concern with doing that for some and not others is that we're not treating all applicants equal. So I think if we were going to do any social media post or anything like that, that it would have to be for all of those applications and not just certain ones.
I think we could group it by classification or type of application without running afoul of that concern. So I can't think of anything at the current moment, but there's certain things that are relatively rote. Those would not trigger it, but we would establish that as a directive.
So let me back up the bus for a minute and just see, and sure, I'll ask you to define this a little bit. I think we're in two different areas, and Scott weigh in here in a second too. One is, I think you're more concerned with where can people find the information more so, and correct me if I'm wrong, broad-based where you can find information and getting that out multiple sites more so than a specific, listing of specific projects. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely not specific projects, but I do like the idea of classification, a classification of projects that we know that we're going to hear a lot about. People are going to have a lot of questions around. that I think you used the word high impact, that people really want to hear. So, like for instance, this rezone, like we know that that has a lot of like interest for the people in the neighborhood. Um, and I think that I know that you mentioned letters, but it seemed that these people were in the neighborhood and had a lot of interest. And but we know that I guess when you're looking at a rezone, it seems like it's relevant as to the whole city, really, if that's what we're looking at. But so that's why I was just saying, like, those are things that we know our community is interested in, and that they were complaining of not knowing, of not having, being aware. And so I'm just like, okay, well, then how do we just make it easier to meet them where they're at, and make it easier for a flow of information?
Okay.
So, yes, I
Um,
like the idea of a classification.
okay. And I think part of it, and it's more like since Dennis is here, Nick's here, Charlie's here, we get several department heads here. I think this is a little bit broader because even like things like stormwater rates, the amount of people that said, gee, I didn't know about this. I felt like we were, that we numerous times had discussed it and had, hearings on it. Scott, thoughts?
So, I'm not opposed to the idea of doing more outreach or more focused
Mhm.
outreach. I like the idea that it relies on the type of permit. I think that's a standard. Um, I, I'm not sure about codifying this in the sense that we adapt, and so we are, moving ideas around constantly, and once you lock it down in code, then if you want to change your process, then you got to go and change the code, and that can be kind of a headache. If we're okay with an internal policy, staff policy on that, I'm okay with that. If we want to codify it, then I think it needs to be very general, in its description of this additional outreach. But I don't have a problem with it. I think that, when we do broadcast it, we might see, broadcast it more. We might see more comments from people who have no interest in the neighborhood, or perhaps don't live in the city, or it might just be somebody who's opposed to government in general, and they live, in Indianola. Um, so, those are all things that I think about, but I'm happy to, if everybody's okay with it, put this towards our new staff and have her come back. What's her name again? I'm sorry.
Megan,
Megan.
Megan,
Have Megan maybe come back with a plan, that we could all look at and say, we're moving in the right direction, or this is good.
would it be okay with both members? And Dennis, I saw your hand raised. Just give me a second. Would it be okay with both members if I send a note to the mayor? Hey, this is our discussion. Watch this thing and let us know what a plan may be. Because I think it's not just about public notices, but I think about information, city information getting out there and being disseminated. Because I mean, one of my pet peeves is the fact is that we have people that aren't online. How do they get it? I mean,
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
of the way I champion is the fact that the school district publishes a newsletter every quarter. Is the city doing the same? And I think Dennis, you are doing a newsletter for Public Works, correct? Go ahead, Dennis.
Oh,
You're up. You got
annual newsletter. So, I mean, that's just kind of a
okay.
recap in the year. But no, I just going to bring up a topic that's kind of related with their new, we're moving in the right direction with their outreach and our communication person with the start of Megan, which is our first one ever. Uh, the chief and I have also been working out on community notification. So we're just in an infancy where we're going to kick it out for like emergency staff notifications. But there are services eventually that the city will get where we'll be able to push those out, like the school district, like it's a snow day. You're not checking your email in the morning. You don't want to watch the news, but you're going to get a text message. So we're exploring all that.
The other thing I'll
I
just
think
add that is important to note is that we have specific timelines in our noticing processes, and so we can't have our notification processes impact those. So, and if
Sherrod,
they
you had
do,
a
then
hand
we've
up
got
there.
procedural issues, and there's nothing worse than a procedural appeal.
Sherrod, did you have your hand up for a final comment?
No, I just put my
Okay.
So I can reach out to Megan and ask her to have a discussion with Jim and me about this issue and see what recommendations she has, and maybe continue this discussion next month. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Charlie, do
I'm
you want to
also
be involved in that conversation?
I'm
Uh,
gonna
no, I think we've talked about the legal aspects of
Okay.
this. So yeah, unless you want me there, I don't.
All right. As long as you didn't have concerns with us doing this without you.
No,
I'd like to
no.
back up to a comment that I think Scott made, and that was I believe it was Scott, may have been somebody else, and that is you can have information overload if every time you get a notification, eventually you stop looking at notifications because you're getting, pinged every 5 seconds by somebody. So it's a balancing act. So let's move forward and see what we can do. I think we all agree. I can certainly speak for Scott and myself since we've been here a while, and for the longer serving department heads that long overdue for this position, and I wish we would have pushed a little harder for it earlier. So, hang in there.
Yeah. The other thing maybe Nick or Jim, you can answer this. The state has a minimum radius, notification radius. Is it 250 or 300 feet? 300 feet. Okay. So that 300 feet in the state's mind defines that impact area. So I just am throwing that out because I'm not sure everybody's aware of that, but I think it's interesting to note that jurisdictions typically align with that. Some places go much more. So
Yeah, and I think for instance, in the city of Tacoma where I live, when they do like major planning efforts, they will do like, a quarter mile radius of areas of study for those types of things. And I think that they can do larger radiuses depending on how much interest they think a project is going to have. And so I think mailing notices is a really good way to make sure you're reaching people at the right scale for the
yeah.
project. But again, we run into that issue of how do you decide whether one project needs 250 feet versus another one needing 1,000 feet. I think we have to treat those projects equally, at least in categories, anyway.
Yeah.
And just one final note on that, if I may, I would encourage as this project works its way through this committee and then back to council, that we focus our rhetoric on this being an enhancement of our noticing processes rather than solving for a lack of transparency issue, because we do currently comply with Washington state law. And as the council members noted, no level of notice is ever perfect. I just had a case for another agency where someone appealed on the basis of a lack of notice, and we have photos of the 10-foot sign next to his garbage can and his mailbox where he drove past every day, and he's still asserting a lack of notice. So regardless of what we do, folks are always going to be frustrated. So this is absolutely an enhancement of noticing, just a coaching moment on roles and responsibilities. Thanks.
Yeah, I think as Shira said, this is a promotion of transparency. So as
Right.
long as we move it forward that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just one thing. It was stated at the beginning of this discussion for public hearings that we post a sign on site. Just want to be clear that the code does not require a sign to be posted on site. While that may be effective for site-specific proposals, there's no way to post a sign for like a code amendment or anything like that because it applies citywide. So just to be
Absolutely.
clear,
I don't think we're talking about any changes to that element.
yeah, just to be clear that
that's the quagmire.
there's no sign required for a public hearing.
I think Charlie nailed it on the head. Enhancement of noticing. Okay.
Good discussion.
Yeah, actually very robust. Discussion of Gibbons Park Master Plan.
So can I kick it off?
Absolutely.
What we're looking for. Great. Thanks for having me tonight. So as we mentioned last regular council meeting, we are getting ready to kick off our master planning process. We've actually started, survey was done this week. They're doing aerial drone footage tomorrow. I just met with our team, and we've identified stakeholders that we're going to be reaching out to. Wanted to reach out to this group to get a council representative of the stakeholder group. And I want to say, I already see hands up. I want to kind of tell you what this is. It's You are the policymakers, you are the decision makers for the city and the city council. This is a collaborative process. Everybody has the same input. So I didn't want to make sure that we don't have any preconceived notions. We want somebody to be actively part of the process with all the team members. And then this person from this group would also be, we would look to update council at good of the order about where we're at in the process. And we just want to make sure that there's no preconceived notions. There's lots of unrealized potential with this park. I know we heard from one
Yep.
council member about how they're historical. There's ways things can make and be moved to maintain the integrity, like the concrete seat walls that are out there. But there's some great opportunities. That's my pitch, and I just wanted to make sure I had an emphasis that I don't get to be in charge of the process. You, as a council member, doesn't get to be in charge of this process. Only when you vote to adopt the master plan.
So I'll
Be a part of
nominate
the
Shira.
process because I walk to that park and I use it regularly. So so it's not even as a council member. I don't care about that. I want to be part of the process as like a mom who uses it on the regular.
So when does this group get active? When does this begin?
We're actually going to start notification for public meetings. So we're going to look for Thursday nights. We're going to do it at the Active Club, right? What fitting place?
Yeah,
other
that's
fitting
a great place.
to do it. So everybody's welcome. I mean, if there's a quorum, we'll have to do notification. But
Through
we
the-
will be. What's that?
No, go ahead, finish. Sorry.
Yeah. So we're looking for the stakeholder meetings, and there's not going to be too many of them. I anticipate probably 4 to 6 meetings total, and they get through the process, and there'll be a survey. So we're looking at Thursday evenings, Active Club. I don't have exact dates yet, but the first one will be in April.
So the reason I asked was I think it would be good for Jay and I and staff, but I think really it's meant for Jay and I to talk to Shira about what are our observations, and then so she can go into that perhaps with a little more awareness. I think we're generally going to be on the same page. That park has the potential to become kind of an epicenter and reshape the neighborhood a little bit long range. And over the years, and I've been, I think I mentioned that my son played a lot in that park and t-ball and all that kind of stuff. Um, but over the years, it's just been kind of what we can call lipstick. And I think that there's a lot that can be done that would make that a destination.
Well, I think I know I mentioned this at the council meeting when we discussed this, and I'm not sure about what the charter is on this, Dennis, because it may not be in the scope. But with the county eventually moving away from the land that they have there, i.e., the building and stuff, are they going to be able to look at a out year look and not just our current state? Because
Yeah.
at some point, because at some point in time, much like, it will probably, much like Veterans Park, it will probably be an area that will inherit, if nothing else.
So we've talked to the consultant before we awarded and said that there could be an unknown opportunity for future acquisition
Okay.
of that site.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the stakeholders are going to say, the steering group and the public. There might be great emphasis on doing something with the Givens Community Center. So right now we've got Connor from Nick's team. Connor volunteered. I don't know if Nick told him to be on it, but no, Connor was part of the selection process. I'll be more of the observer, trying to steer the steering committee. And then the council representative, we're looking for somebody I'm looking for a contact for the senior center. And
I think Shira,
Yes, I'm your
I think
person. I really am.
You volunteered as a council member.
Well, not to mention, I actually talk to people at the senior center like quite often.
So if you connect with me with somebody that can
Yeah.
serve, and somebody from baseball and somebody from Pee Wee football, we're getting a really good group. And I'm not going to plug any council member, but we are also looking for somebody that's in the neighborhood. So
Exactly. That's why I had my hand up. Okay.
So sure, maybe
Okay.
just to keep it easy is if you could send Jay and I what your vision is, we can say, hey, yeah, this looks great, or also add something or whatever.
But I don't have to have a vision. It's a steering committee.
Well, but your vision, I think, is really important, right? And by the way, I
It's a
forgot to get back
team
to you,
effort.
Shira.
Okay,
What's that?
okay, please just one at a time. It's
Oh,
overloaded.
sorry. I was
Just
sorry.
one at a time, please.
I'll just finish up by saying that, Shira, I forgot to get back to you, but there's no active discussion on Givens Center and its sale. I think the county long term would like to get rid of it, but any buyer should know going into that there's a lot of work.
I know that there's a meeting on it on Monday.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I know it's an anchor around the county.
Okay. That concludes our agenda. Is there anything for the good of the order? I have one thing, but I'll go last. Shira?
No, I did not realize this was going to be going so long. I actually had another meeting.
Okay, well, okay, Scott, anything for you?
I don't have anything. I think
Okay. The only thing talking about notifications and stuff, the Stormwater Park, I was just wondering if the next meeting had been scheduled yet for that.
We are meeting internally, I believe, on Monday to get with Connor and review his most recent illustration. So hopefully that will be occurring soon, but stay tuned.
Okay, I will. Thank you very much. And Shara, that's at the end of Sydney, Sydney South, and there's been some very good discussion about that, and so that's something that just wet your whistle later on. Thank you everybody for tonight, and a lot of good discussion. I think we've reached, we've got some work to do, but we're moving forward. So thank you, and see you next month on these items.
all right, bye everybody.
Bye.